Hello there, we're going to talk about getting into hobbying, the tools that you need in order to start, what is absolutely necessary. So getting into hobbying, when I first started, it was with Airfix models, and quite literally I started by getting some Revol plastic cement, poly cement, and a small retractable Stanley knife from the pound shop, the thin, about centimeter blade Stanley knife. And literally with that, with some care and patience and time and thinking about what you're doing, I assembled 3 or 4 kits exactly like that. In fact, my original Chaos Space Marine kit was assembled like that. I did not have a model knife at that time. It wasn't until I was halfway through putting them together that I got a model knife. A Stanley knife is sharp enough to cut through the plastic, and if you carefully work with it and make sure to, trim back and carefully, take care of the nub marks of where it's come off the sprue, you can absolutely get away with it. So for assembling the models, you need glue, obviously. The brand of glue doesn't necessarily matter too much, but you don't have to buy Games Workshop plastic glue, Games Workshop super glue. You could just buy some super glue and some plastic glue. I would personally recommend Tamiya plastic glue, poly cement, and I'm a little bit of a fan of Everbuild super glue, but anything will work. EvoStick, Gorilla, Loctite. A lot of people swear by Loctite. When I put together my early Warhammer models, I used Loctite with a little brush applicator, and it worked quite well. Really well, in fact. So we've got the models out. You could use a pair of side cutters, those little pound shop, you get them little red handled side cutters. You could use those to trim the sprue and then get in with your Stanley and do it. You don't need a pair of Hobbie nippers and a Hobbie knife, especially if you're starting out. You might already have these tools and you just want to kind of get in there. If you want precision and you want to make sure that you don't accidentally damage it or try and put on too much force and hurt yourself, by all means, go to the pound shop, get a Hobbie knife. Go on Amazon, eBay, get a cheap Hobbie knife. It does not have to be X-Acto, it just has to be a model knife. And you can get a cheap pair of nippers as well. Sometimes you'll find that they're fantastic, and once you've got the handle, you can figure out which blades fit, and you could get the better blades, or the economy blades, whichever you prefer, and work with it. Now, it's better to get a knife handle that is all metal, but it doesn't matter if it has a plastic insert on the inside. It will still work. Now, we've got our model, we've cut it out, we've trimmed it up, we've tidied up the mold line, which you should definitely do, because it will help you when you're painting, and all you do is just rub the edge of the knife across, and it'll just carefully shive it down. Don't try to go in at an angle and cut it off, just flat along, and it'll take it off. We've glued it together. We need to prime it. You can use bottle primers, Army Painter, Games Workshop. I used an early Games Workshop can because somebody bought it for me. It's okay. The early one. I haven't tried it since they've changed all the paints and everything. This was very, very early 2000s. But I like to use car paint, auto primers, cheap ones. It costs about £4 a tin for a big tin, and I have never had an issue with it. I prefer to use grey over everything and then paint it white or paint it black if I need to paint it white or paint it black, and then go from there. But you can get any colour that you prefer. If you want to get an Army Painter one, if you want to get a GW one, then by all means do that. I have used an Army Painter primer before, the coloured ones, and even with methylated spirits, I could not get that off the model kit that I put it in. So I think it has a slight plastic etch in it. I'm not 100% certain on that, but in this particular instance, it did not want to come off. Which is good for a primer. And it has very good key, and it's a very nice colour, it's very matte. I like it. And you're going to need some brushes. Now the brushes that I always use are the brushes out of the works, the Bollomere brushes. You can choose to get a hobby brush if you want and spend more money on it, or you can buy a bunch of brushes and just work with them with what you've got. I get a lot of good results with very cheap brushes. I just work with it and I like it. I don't have a particularly high hobby budget in order to get Games Workshop models and then get a insane brush at the same time. It's, do I want really good or mediocre, or do I want really good and mediocre? And I'll call it that, sure. But I use it well, and I get good results. It's about learning how to use your tool, and sometimes you might even find that when you get a better tool after using the poor one for so long, you're even better with the good one, because the tool was actually holding you back and you've learnt the hard way. Like learning how to play football with a marble. When you get to the actual proper football, you're like, oh my god, this is just so easy. And then paints. Now, I've tried to paint with just buy a pack of acrylic paints and things like that and doing it, and I have never had that good of an experience with it personally. I will always recommend bottle paints. Paints is the one place where I won't skimp out, but I still think that you should only get GW paints if that's exactly what you want. I think that you should get Vallejo Army Painter Scale 75 and use their paints instead and match. There are places on the internet where you can find colour conversion charts which will tell you what this colour is in another range, and then try it and give it a go. But just also remember that, you know, those colours are guides. A Blood Angel's Space Marine, his armour is red. It doesn't have to be blood red. It can be a different shade of red, as long as it's red. So it's always an interesting way to look at it. And that is it for the essentials. For the absolute bare minimum to get in there, you have gotten the plastic kit, you have taken it off its sprue, you have tidied it up, you have glued it together, you have primed it, and you have painted it. Now, with repeated use, you'll wear that paint off just by picking the model up. That's how it works. Our hands are actually abrasive. That's why in like houses, old houses with banisters on the stairs, it'll be like really smooth, but then there's that point where your hand doesn't actually reach and that bit's actually like rougher, and you're like, oh, it's actually been polished by repeated people's hands just moving down it. And of course the paint coats on a model should be very thin, so it doesn't have a lot to wear through, so eventually you'll wear through the corners just by using the game piece. So I would recommend getting a clear coat or lacquer for it, in matte. Satin maybe, but matte preferably. You don't want a gloss. You can pick out certain things with a gloss medium, but I would say no to gloss in general. It looks amazing, but after a while you realize you're like, actually it should be matte. And I highly recommend the Army Painter one and Humbrol. But the Humbrol one is very expensive. And of course, anything Tamiya and Mr. Hobbie. 100% with just yes. You don't need an airbrush to get started. You don't even need to think about airbrushing. You need just what you need in order to get the enjoyment out of it that you want to get out of it. And that's this video. what you need in order to start to finish. Catch you in the next one.
Alright guys, thanks for getting to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications for the next time we put a video out. Also, we've got playlists up there, subscribe buttons down there, don't forget to click it, and recommended videos are that way. See you later.